This session is all about the renowned English poet of 17th century, John Milton. Now, I've made an attempt to include most of John Milton's works and also important events that occurred during his time in chronological order, because if you're learning it that way in the order of time, then that's really going to help you in memorizing all the points based on that particular topic. Now, I've made 2 videos on John Milton, and this is first part of John Milton, where you have 20 questions and answers and also points based on each question. Now, but the magnum opus of John Milton, that is Paradise Lost, will be included in my second video, so don't miss it, because the contents in both the videos are equally important. So subscribe and press the bell icon to get notified with my new uploads, and also like, share and leave a comment. So let's get started with the first part of John Milton.
John Milton, 1608 to 1674. Now here are a few points before we get into questions and answers. John Milton was born on 9th December 1608 in Bread Street, London. He was one of the greatest poets of England and placed next to Shakespeare in the hierarchy of English poets. So John Milton was a great literary figure of 17th century, and he was placed next to Shakespeare in the hierarchy of English poets. William Haley called him the greatest English author. William Haley was a biographer, and he called him the greatest English author, and he was also called the Lady of Christ. John Milton was educated at Christ College in Cambridge, and from there he earned this name, that is the Lady of Christ, because of his extremely fair complexion and delicate features. So everybody called him the Lady of Christ. The age of Milton, or the age of Puritanism, was from 1625 to 1660. You know that John Milton was a Puritan. He believed in Puritanism, and Puritanism was the greatest movement. It was a religious reform movement, and it has become a national movement against the tyrannical rule of the king, and it stood for the liberty of the people. So Puritans were against the king, and they stood for the liberty of the people. They wanted to make men honest and to make them free. That is, they insisted on the purity of life. And at the same time, Puritans were against common pleasures like dancing, singing, drama. All these entertainments were considered immoral. So that is the age of Milton, or age of Puritanism, from 1625 to 1660. Who does WH Hudson call the most sublime of English poets? John Milton. The supreme quality of Milton's poetry is sublimity. And if you look at John Milton's writings, we can find that he never tried any silly subjects or silly characters like love poetries, or his characters were never lovers or lasses. Instead, his subjects were sublime, like God, Satan, Adam, Eve, or Jesus Christ. That is the reason why W.H. Hudson called him the most sublime of English poets, because of the sublimity in opting his subjects. Who made this remark? Almost all men are less humorous than Shakespeare, but most men are most humorous than Milton. Sir Walter Raleigh. And Sir Walter Raleigh was a British poet and also a historian. He also played a vital role in the history of America. And here Walter Raleigh, Raleigh's words showed that the quality of Milton's poetry. And W.H. Hudson praised him for sublimity, and Raleigh here speaks about his high seriousness. Now, when we talk about Milton's poetry, we get to know that his poetries or his writings lack humor, because he never worried or bothered about a huge audience or admirable readers. According to him, his writings should fit audience, even though less numbers. So that is what Walter Raleigh is trying to say about his high seriousness in his writing. His writings lack humor. Here are a few characteristics of Milton's poetry: sublimity, high seriousness. So these two we have already discussed, and next is imagination. Now Milton's imagination is superb, and only a man of Milton's imagination could have shaped Paradise Lost. Now if you look at the theme of Paradise Lost, it is vast, and the way he created hell and heaven is amazing. Now only a person with such a great imagination could have created this wonderful epic. Next is autobiographical element. Milton's poems are intensely autobiographical. Now, it is exactly the mirror of his own life. For instance, if you look at his Paradise Lost, Samson Agonistes, or Il Penseroso, El Allegro, so all these are the reflections of his own personality. Next is sense of beauty. The chief characteristic of Milton's poetry is his profound love of beauty. Now, if you look at his El Allegro, you can find the depiction of beauty of countryside, how he explained the countryside so beautifully. And also in his Paradise Lost, you can find a glowing description of the beauty of Adam and Eve that shows his profound love of beauty. So the characteristics of Milton's poetry: sublimity, high seriousness, imagination, autobiographical element, and sense of beauty. The master of grand style, Matthew Arnold, the Victorian writer, called Milton the master of grand style. Now Milton's style has been called grand style because of that sort of majesty in it. Now rather than choosing a very common or colloquial style, Milton always chose a grand style or an elevated style, because according to Milton, he always wrote about serious matters, and in order to do justice to those important or serious subjects, he had to implement that grand style or that elevated style, unlike other writers who used to write about some silly subjects. Now when we talk about grand style, Milton used very long expressions or very complex sentences in his writings, and also he even borrowed expressions from Roman or Greek classics and even Bible, and instead of simple or common words, he used unusual words. So that means only those readers who are learned can follow his writings. It is a sort of intellectual writing where the common people find it difficult to understand. So that is the grand style of Milton. So here Matthew Arnold called him the master of grand style. Now here are a few words of praise showered upon Milton by another Victorian poet, Alfred Lord Tennyson. O mighty mouthed inventor of harmonies, O skill to sing of time or eternity, God-gifted organ voice of England, Milton a name to resound for ages. So these are very important lines taken from Tennyson's poem Milton. So these are the opening lines of the poem, and here Tennyson says that Milton's voice was so melodious and powerful and that his name will resound for ages. And he is no doubt talking about that grand style he adopted in Paradise Lost. So when we speak about grand style, of course that Paradise Lost is an example. Now here are another words of praise from another writer, that is a writer of Romantic period, Wordsworth. Thou hadst a voice whose sound was like the sea. And these are the lines, this line is taken from Wordsworth's London 1802. Now here also he is talking about the majestic style of Paradise Lost, or the grand style of that great epic. So these words reveal that Milton is the master of grand style. Milton's poem that mourned the death of a leaf on the death of a fair infant dying of a cup, which was composed in the year 1628. And in this poem, Milton mourned the death of his niece Anne Phillips. And that is, Anne was just 2 years old at the time of her death, and Anne Phillips was Milton's older sister's daughter. Which is Milton's humble ode on the morning of Christ's nativity. That is in 1629, and he wrote it when he was a student at Cambridge in celebration of turning 21. He was just 21 at that time. And the main section is entitled The Hymn, which consists of 27 8-line stanzas. So this is the main body of the poem, and it comes after a 4 stanza introduction. So the main section comes after an introductory part which has got 4 stanzas, and the introductory after the introduction, the main section, that is the hymn, which is entitled The Hymn, comes, and it consists of 27 8-line stanzas. Now it commemorates the birth of Jesus Christ, and it was written on Christmas Day in 1629. So that's about the Nativity Ode. So it's also called as the Nativity Ode of John Milton on the morning of Christ's nativity, which was written in the year 1629 when he was just 21 years old. Which is Milton's first published poem at the age of 22, On Shakespeare. Now, On Shakespeare is Milton's heartfelt tribute to Shakespeare, whose birth outdid the time. Now, here Milton is trying to say that Shakespeare does not need a monument that takes many years to build in order to honor his life, because he has already built the monument for himself through his works. And Milton is trying to describe the value of Shakespeare's literary works, because his plays and poems are his monument. So that is what Milton is trying to say in this poem on Shakespeare. And this was composed in 1630 and printed in the second folio of Shakespeare's plays. Now, Shakespeare's plays were printed in 4 folios, and On Shakespeare was included in the second folio, which was published in the year 1632. Now, On Shakespeare was also known as a song on Shakespeare, and it has got 16 lines. It consists of 16-line single stanza and is divided into heroic couplets, which means pair of rhymed lines. So it has got pair of rhymed lines, and each line is written in iambic pentameter. That means each line has got 5 iambic feet. Now there is also another poem written by Milton, which is titled On the Death of a Fair Infant Dying of a Cup, and this is not published. And here in this poem, Milton laments the death of his niece, who was named Anne, and this was Milton's sister's daughter, who died at the age of 2. So that is about On Shakespeare and on the death of a fair infant dying of a cough. So please note that On Shakespeare is Milton's first published poem, whereas On the Death of a Fair Infant Dying of a Cough is Milton's first poem. So first poem and first published poem. Which are the companion poems of John Milton, Il Penseroso and El Allegro. So these are the companion poems of John Milton, also called as twin poems, and the titles are Latin words. Now let's look at the theme of both the poems. Il Penseroso invokes melancholy and El Allegro celebrates joy. So they have contrasting themes. Here El Allegro is paired with contrasting pastoral poem Il Penseroso. Both these poems are pastoral poems of John Milton. What is the meaning of the title Il Penseroso, which is Milton's lyric poem? The pensive man or the thoughtful one. So the meaning of Il Penseroso, which is a Latin word, is exactly the pensive man, the thoughtful one, or melancholic man. Now, Il Penseroso and El Allegro are the companion poems of John Milton, which he wrote during his college life. Now let's look at a few more points on Il Penseroso. It was written in 1631, published in London in 1645 as part of a collection, the poems of John Milton, both English and Latin. So that is the name of the collection, the poems of John Milton, both English and Latin, in which Il Penseroso was published. And the concluding line of Il Penseroso, and I with thee will choose to live. So that is the concluding line of Il Penseroso. So Il Penseroso and El Allegro are the companion poems of John Milton written during his college life. Now let's take a look at El Allegro. Here is El Allegro. The meaning of El Allegro is the happy man, and the meaning of Il Penseroso is the pensive man or the thoughtful one. And the concluding line is, mirth with thee I mean to live. And El Allegro is written in rhymed octosyllabics, and octosyllabic means line with 8 syllables, and here the lines are rhymed as well. So that is El Allegro, and El Allegro and Il Penseroso are the twin poems or companion poems of John Milton, which he wrote during his college life, and the titles are Latin words. Who is the author of Life of Milton? Samuel Johnson. And it's taken from Samuel Johnson's work Lives of the Most Eminent English Poets. Samuel Johnson is a great literary figure who is known for his essay collections, his biographies, his dictionaries, etc. And here Samuel Johnson's work, Lives of the Most Eminent English Poet, comprises of 52 poets, and most of them lived during the 18th century. And here he comprises short biographies and also critical appraisals of these 52 poets. And Lives of the Most Eminent English Poets is known as Lives of the Poets in short. So that's about Life of Milton by Samuel Johnson. So it's included or it's taken from Samuel Johnson's work Lives of the Most Eminent English Poets, which is known as Lives of the Poets. What is the masque written by Milton? Comus in 1634. Now Comus is originally entitled as a masque presented at Ludlow Castle, printed anonymously in 1637. Now it is a masque in honor of chastity. Now Comus is a masque written in honor of chastity, and the occasion of Comus was the appointment of John Egerton, or Earl, that is Earl of Bridgewater, as the Lord President of Wales. So Comus is written for special occasions. Okay, here the occasion is at the appointment of John Egerton, that is Earl of Bridgewater, as the Lord President of Wales. So that is the occasion of writing Comus. So now a masque is a festival, or it is an entertainment in which disguised participants offer gifts to their host, and finally they join together for a ceremonial dance. And this masque involved all the dancing, singing, music, and acting, everything. And masque originated in England. Now there is another masque written by Milton, that is Arcades, and it is also a masque written to celebrate the character of Alice Spencer, who was a Countess Dowager of Derby during her 75th birthday. Now when we speak about Comus, it's about a pair of brothers who, along with their sister, are lost in the woods, and the sister is referred to as the lady. Now Comus is an immoral character, so always remember that Comus is an immoral character, and he held the sister captive in his palace. So she was held captive there, but in the end she was rescued. So that's about Comus. And the other masque written by Milton is Arcades. So the notable masque is Comus. Fame is the last infirmity of noble mind, in which poem of Milton does this line occur, Liddell. Lycidas is Milton's great elegy, and it was written in the form of pastoral elegy. If you want to know more about elegy and pastoral elegy, just go through my video on elegy, in which I have also explained pastoral elegy. I've also included many great elegies written by great writers, so just check it out. Lycidas emerged in the collection of elegies titled Justa Edurado King Nefrago. So that is the name of the collection of elegies in which Lycidas was included. And in Lycidas, Milton laments the death of Edward King, who was his friend and also a budding poet. So Edward King dedicated his life to poetry, and here Milton laments the death of Edward King in his Lycidas. And Lycidas was composed in 1637 and was published a year later in 1638. So that's about Lycidas, and the great line from this elegy, that is, fame is the last infirmity of noble might.
In which year did Milton meet Galileo? 1638. Now it was in 1638 that Milton undertook a tour to European countries like France, Switzerland and Italy. He even planned to visit Greece, but he was forced to return home in England because of the rumors of civil war in England, or of the political tension in England. So he couldn't continue that tour. Next is the name the elegy written by Milton on Charles Diodati, that is Epitaphium Damonis or Damon's Epitaph, in the year 1639. That is, it was during the time of European tour that he got to know about the death of his closest friend, or the childhood friend, Charles Diodati. So upon his return, he wrote an elegy lamenting the death of his close friend, Charles Diodati, and the name of the elegy is Epitaphium Damonis, that is written in Latin, which means Damon's Epitaph. So Milton met Galileo in 1638, and also Milton mentioned Galileo, the astronomer, in his renowned work Paradise Lost. So that is about Milton's meeting with Galileo, and also his European tour, and the elegy written by Milton upon his return to England after the European tour, that is Epitaphium Damonis, on the death of Charles Diodati. Now let's look at the political tracts of Milton, and it was composed on the reformation of Church of England. You know that Milton wanted to reform the Church of England. He believed that the Church of England was corrupt and he wanted to abolish it. So he expressed his views on the church reformation of the Church of England in his polemical prose tracts or political tracts, and they are of reformation, animadversions of prelatical episcopacy, and the reason for church government. So these are the political tracts of Milton, in which he expressed his views on the reformation of the Church of England. And one more thing is that, having returned to England after the European tour, he concentrated on writing prose. He just shifted his attention from poetry to prose. That means he did not write any poetry for 20 years after that. Between 1640 till 1660, that is for 20 years, he did not write any poetry. Instead, he devoted his life in writing prose or pamphlets. He was a Puritan, and so he wrote for the Puritan cause, and that also in prose. So he was also against the king, and his anti-royalistic views were also expressed in these prose tracts. Okay, and now on civil war, it was fought between the king and parliament in 1642. You know that Milton returned after the European tour to England in the year 1639, that because of the political tensions that existed during that time. You know that after 1639, a lot of political tensions were there, and in the year 1642 there was a civil war fought between the king and parliament, and it ended in the execution of Charles I.
who was the monarch then. And Charles I was beheaded publicly, and after that a commonwealth was established under Oliver Cromwell, who was a political leader. So the civil war was fought in the year 1642 and it ended with the execution of Charles I, and finally Commonwealth was established under Oliver Cromwell. Okay, so that's about civil war and political tracts of Milton. Which is the work of Milton in which he defended divorce? The Doctrine and Discipline of Divorce in 1643. And this is a pamphlet, in the form of a pamphlet. He also wrote another 3 pamphlets, and together they are called as divorce tracts. So series of pamphlets known collectively as divorce tracts. And the Doctrine and Discipline of Divorce is one among these pamphlets, and the remaining 3 are the Judgment of Martin Bucer concerning divorce, Tetrachordon, and Colasterian. So these are the 4 pamphlets, and together they are known as divorce tracts. And when we speak about these divorce tracts, we should know about Milton's married life. Milton married 3 times, and the first wife was Mary Powell, and she was just 17 years old at the time of marriage. That means half the age of Milton, who was 34 at that time. They got married in 1642, and shortly after the marriage she left him and returned to her home. Even Milton was not interested in that relationship, and he wanted to divorce her, but divorce was illegal in England at that time, and that was really unhappy for Milton, because he wanted to end that relationship with Mary Powell and wanted to get married to someone else, which was not possible because of the laws of England regarding divorce. And this is the reason which made him write the divorce tracts, in which he argued for change to the divorce laws. So Milton says that for a good marriage there should be a compatibility or mutual understanding between partners, and if that is not happening, it's better to get separated. So this is how he tried to express in this divorce tracts. So when it comes to Mary Powell, she later on returned to Milton, but she died while giving birth to her baby. Secondly, Milton married Catherine Woodcock. So this marriage was far more successful than Milton's previous one, and she died from, Catherine Woodcock also died from the complications experienced while giving birth. So the second marriage was in the year 1656 to Catherine Woodcock. So that was anyway, that was a happy relationship, even though it didn't last long because she died very soon. And here you can see the Sonnet 23 of Milton. Methought I saw my late spouse said. So this is dedicated to her second wife Catherine Woodcock, but still there is an ambiguity, because some believe that this sonnet is about his first wife Mary Powell, but most of them believe that it's dedicated to Catherine Woodcock, his second wife, and this is Milton's Sonnet 23. Now, Milton married the 3rd time in the year 1662 to Elizabeth Minchin. It is said that Milton's daughters were against this marriage, but still Milton married to Elizabeth Minchin, and this relationship ended till the death of Milton in the year 1674. So that's all about Milton's married life and divorce tracts. Which of Milton's work contains a plea of freedom of press, Areopagitica, and it's a pamphlet published in 1644. Now, a pamphlet is a small booklet, and it contains information or arguments about a single subject, and this pamphlet argues on the freedom of press. Now, Areopagitica was written as a protest to the government order, and government passed an order at that time, that is the licensing order, according to which anyone publishing written work would have to submit it to government censors. And
finally the decision will be up to the government as to the work should be published or not. So Milton was against this, and according to him, freedom of opinion is important, and censoring anyone's opinion is not good. So he wrote this Areopagitica against the government order passed at that time, which is called the licensing order, and it is written in prose and considered as his greatest prose work. Now here are a few points regarding the title. The full title is Areopagitica, a speech of Mr. John Milton for the liberty of unlicensed printing to the Parliament of England, and the title is taken from a speech written by Athenian orator Isocrates. So these two points are important regarding the full title, and also the title is taken from a speech written by Athenian orator Isocrates. And there is another pamphlet published by John Milton in 1644 anonymously, that is the title is Of Education, and it is a pamphlet in which Milton expressed his views on reforming education. He wanted to bring some changes in the education system, and the ideas in this pamphlet were influenced by the educated John Cornelius. So these are the pamphlets published in 1644, but Of Education was published anonymously. So that is about Areopagitica and Of Education, the two pamphlets published by John Milton in 1644.
And this is a significant quote from his Areopagitica. A good book is a precious lifeblood of a master spirit, embalmed and treasured up on purpose to a life beyond life. So please note down this, because this is very important, from his Areopagitica, which was the work of Milton expressing his support of a republican form of government. The Tenure of Kings and Magistrates, 1649. This work was probably written before and during the execution of Charles I. You know that Milton supported republican form of government and he was against the king. And so he expressed all these views in the Tenure of Kings and Magistrates. Who headed the Puritan government formed after the execution of Charles I? Oliver Cromwell. So Oliver Cromwell, the political leader, headed the Puritan government formed after the execution of Charles I. You know that after the Civil War, Charles I was executed, he was beheaded, and it was the Puritan government who came into force under Oliver Cromwell. And Charles I was executed in 1649. After that, Commonwealth under Oliver Cromwell was established in the year 1649, and it continued till 1660. So after the execution of Charles I, Commonwealth under Oliver Cromwell came into force, or it was established, and Milton was appointed Latin Secretary to the Committee of Foreign Affairs. So once the Commonwealth was established under Oliver Cromwell in 1649, after the execution of Charles I, Milton was appointed Latin Secretary to the Committee of Foreign Affairs. On whose blindness is a sonnet on his blindness about? Milton's own. Now this is an autobiographical sonnet, okay, and it reflects on his faith that as he is turning blind, his faith in God as he is losing his sight. The first line of the sonnet is, when I consider how my light is spent. So this sonnet is also called when I consider how my light is spent, apart from on his blindness. Now this is written in the form of a Petrarchan sonnet, and Petrarchan sonnet traditionally focuses on love and romance, but in this sonnet Milton explores his relationship with God. And the Petrarchan sonnet was popularized by the Italian writer Petrarch. And the concluding line of the sonnet is, it's an oft-quoted line, that is, they also serve who only stand and wait. It's a very important line, and that is the concluding line of the sonnet. Then Milton became completely blind in 1652 at the age of 44. Now his eyesight began to fade in 1644 and by 1652 he was totally blind. But he wrote his greatest works, Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained, after he became blind. So that's all about his sonnet on his blindness, which is an autobiographical sonnet and written in the Petrarchan form. The concluding line, which is very important, they also serve who only stand and wait.
Who calls Milton a corruptor of English language? John Keats. So it was the romantic writer John Keats who called Milton a corruptor of English language. Name the theological treatise written by Milton on Christian doctrine, and the Latin title is De Doctrina Christiana. So it's actually a Latin manuscript and it was discovered and translated in English in 1825. So that is the theological treatise written by Milton, that is De Doctrina Christiana. Which is the sonnet of Milton addressing Cromwell? Sonnet 16, and it is titled to the Lord General Cromwell. So this is the sonnet of Milton addressing Cromwell, and General Cromwell was the Lord Protector of England, and after the execution of Charles I, it was Oliver Cromwell who established the Commonwealth of England.
That's all in the first part of John Milton. Hope this is going to help you in scoring high in your exams. But still, there are more to come on John Milton in my upcoming video. So stay tuned and thanks for watching.